Hi everyone, welcome to Back to School Night. My name is Jane Drake and I will be teaching your children's science this year. This is a diverse class of students of various strengths and abilities, and I'm excited to learn more about them. In this class, we'll be incorporating skills that are at grade level and which align with the next generation science standards for 7th grade science. This includes integrating technology and literacy skills, and there's a lot of topics to cover. From biological diversity, cell function, major organ systems to reproduction, hereditary, matter and energy, ecosystems. There's a lot, but we have lots of hands-on and interactive activities to help make real-world connections, which will help your child learn. The main purpose of this video is to go over the next generation science standards, so let's dive right in. So, when our children enter school, we as parents and caregivers hear a lot of new terminology. It's overwhelming. It's like learning a new language, so I hope to clear some things up in this presentation. Standards are clear, established guidelines for what every student should know and be able to do by the end of each grade level. And when we have a shared and consistent understanding of what our students need to know, educators and parents alike can work together to make sure our students are ready for success and be prepared for life after high school. So standards are a collection of these guidelines, and there is a set at each grade level. You could think of them as learning goals, and standards also help educators track student progress throughout the year, and this is to make sure that they're on the right path and having successful outcomes and modifying things if we need to along the way so they can be successful. Okay, so the key player, I know that you probably have heard about content standards, state standards, but the two major players here in California are Common Core standards and then the next generation science standards. The Common Core state standards reflect what students are expected to learn in the areas of English language arts and mathematics. And we're going to focus on the next generation science standards, which are specific to science and engineering, and they are not included in the Common Core standards, although they do work together. Okay. Moving right along, just an overview. This diagram here kind of represents the framework of next generation science standards, and what the next generation science standards do is they identify scientific and engineering practices, cross-cutting concept, and core ideas in science that all K through 12 students need to learn in order to prepare for life beyond primary and secondary education. The three areas that make up this 3D framework I mentioned just real briefly, and I will go into them more in detail later on, but the practices, core ideas, and cross-cutting concepts, those are all color-coded, and you will, like I said, we'll go into those more later. But these three areas make up a 3D framework that are research-based and strive to improve science education in all classrooms so that our students develop scientific literacy. This includes engaging students and giving them opportunities for problem-solving, critical thinking, and making connections across science disciplines. Supporting students in developing literacy in science is important. It's so important because it will help students understand, inquire, communicate, investigate, and reflect on the world around them. Science is at the core of our lives. It's all around us, and we want our students to be active participants in society, and that's what the goal of NGSS is. Now, why next generation science standards? So up until a few years ago, science education was stuck in what you and I were learning in our science classes. And I think we can all agree that the 80s and 90s were totally rad, in almost in every way, but educators and scientists alike realized that our schools really needed to adopt a new way of teaching our students, because we have made some really major advances in science and technology in the past 20 years. And I kind of just did a little timeline here so you can see and get excited about this as much as I'm excited about it. Just briefly, in the last 20 years, in 2003, the Human Genome Project was completed, and scientists successfully sequenced the entire human genome. In 2004, graphene, which is an element, was isolated, and so we've used this element for years in pencil lead, but its unique properties and in its isolated form, it has great potential to create more efficient solar panels, water filtration systems, and even defenses against mosquitoes. So it's super important. In 2005, YouTube launched its first video, which is what we're going to use today. So you can see the application on a daily basis, how important science is. In 2007, Apple launched its iPhone, and today almost 7 billion people are using a cell phone worldwide. And, the population of the world is 7.9 billion, so we're not that far off from every single human in this world having a cell phone. In 2014, Mars rover finds water under the surface of Mars, and the NGSS standards were released in 2013. So as you can see, we really desperately needed to modernize our science standards to keep up with this progress and teach our future generations how to think critically, analyze information, and problem solve. And this is a shift in our previous methods where students memorized facts and followed a set of pre-formulated lab instructions. And we really need students actively engaging in the practices of science. Okay, so this model here might be a little overwhelming, but we'll break it down. It's color-coded. The three main areas where the science standards have changed and improved upon from prior standards are implementing performance expectations, so what students need to be able to do in order to demonstrate competency in a specific area. The foundations, where each performance expectation integrates all three dimensions of the framework. So again, the science or engineering practice, the core disciplinary idea, and the cross-cutting concepts. And then connection, which is linking each performance expectation to not only other areas in science and engineering, but also to other subjects. So think of this as sort of like an onion with different layers, and all these areas work together cohesively. But the 3D design, the framework, comes from these three concepts, and I'll go into each one. And you'll see that the next generation science standards are aligned with Common Core standards in mathematics and English. And so NGSS is not part of Common Core, so this might be confusing. But if you think about it, to solve a problem in a real world, you often need skills that you learned from other classes. So you need math and English skills in science, measuring quantities, analyzing data that you've collected from experience, using statistics to do that. And you also need to know how to read scientific literature and extract important information and write about your own findings. So these are all goals that we want for our students. Diving into those three branches of the standards, disciplinary core area, it's the orange, and I've included the diagram here so you can kind of follow that. So this is what guides teachers in teaching the content in the core areas of science. This includes physics, life science, earth science, etc. It describes what students should understand, and also what they know and what they've learned from a previous grade level. So it's a progression, it's a continuum. And you will see more in-depth expectations from each grade level to grade level. All right, So next is the science and engineering practices. So there are 8 skills or practices that scientists and engineers engage in. This is what they do. They ask questions and define problems. They develop and use models, plan and carry out investigations, analyzing and interpreting data. You can look at the list there. There are 8 of them, and this is super important. We want our students to think and act like a scientist or an engineer. And so this is why these are integrated within the science standards. Okay, and then lastly, the green area are the cross-cutting concepts. And this is how scientists and engineers think. They bridge ideas between science disciplines. These are the concepts that apply to one or more areas in science, like across life science, physics, earth science, technology. And understanding these common threads helps students deepen their understanding and allows them to apply their practices more effectively. Okay, there's 7 there. You can look those over. I won't go into detail with those. Okay. Here is an example of a science standard to kind of put everything that I've talked about together. The HSPS 1-1, don't worry about that. It's just the code. We have to number these and organize it somehow. But the standard is use the periodic table as a model to predict the relative properties of elements based on the patterns of electrons in the outermost energy level of atoms. So the clarification statement is just a little bit more detail, providing examples, and it's helpful for teachers when they're developing their lesson plans. But you'll see down below here are the 3 areas of the framework, and they're color coded. So the science and engineering practices in blue. So this science standard tackles developing and using models. And then the disciplinary core idea that this standard focuses on is structure and properties of matter. And then the cross-cutting concept is patterns. The periodic table is super cool. It's amazing if you haven't looked into it. I didn't appreciate it as a student myself, but now as an educator and as an adult, it is amazing how the elements that are found in nature share all these different properties, and there's a pattern. So that's the cross-cutting concept that you can find within the periodic table. Okay, so that is it in a nutshell. That was a lot of information. Please don't hesitate to reach out to me if you have any questions. But again, next generation science standards are based on a 3D framework, and they're used for students kindergarten through 12th grade, and it helps students build science literacy skills through active learning. And next generation science standards emphasizes using observable phenomena to engage students and facilitate learning through questioning and investigation, and so they can understand the world around us and become future scientists. They're our next generation, and so we want them to be informed and be active members of society. Again, please don't hesitate to reach out. Thank you so much. Good night.